So we're coming near the end of a 2-month series, looking at this book. How do I get this visible? The Mirror of Dharma with Additions. I feel like a spokesmodel. The Mirror of Dharma with Additions, I think most of you are familiar with it, at least a little by now. We're spending 2 months on the second chapter, which is called Essential Insights into the Three Principal Aspects of the Path to Enlightenment. So the three principal aspects of the path to enlightenment is a text by Je Tsongkhapa, who lived about 600 years ago. You can almost see him. He's right next to whoever that is. Who is that? That's Kedrub J. Anyway, he lived about 600 years ago. He wrote this short text. He wrote a lot of texts, but he wrote this short one just going over these three principal aspects of the path, which are renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view of emptiness. So we looked at renunciation a little at the beginning of the series. Renunciation basically is our own wish to be free from suffering permanently. Now we're on the 5th week of looking at bodhicitta, and then we'll have 2 weeks on the correct view of emptiness. So, this week we'll be focusing on bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is, one way to describe it, it's this weird analogy. Well, it wasn't weird in the past. It's just, I don't know how many of you have spent time on farms. So the analogy is that bodhicitta is the quintessential butter that comes from churning the milk of Buddha's teachings. And so it's like if you take the milk, take ordinary milk and you churn it long enough, then it transforms into butter. And I think if you actually did this, you grew up in on a farm or something, then you have some feeling for that. And so it is similar. If you meditate on Buddha's teachings again and again, sort of churn, like going around the cycle of meditations, what do you get? Eventually, you get bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is what Buddha's teachings produce. And bodhicitta is a really special intention, a really special mind that we can develop. Bodhicitta is mainly universal compassion. It's mainly our wish to free all living beings from suffering permanently. And then on top of that, or motivated by that, bodhicitta is our intention to become a Buddha. So bodhicitta actually has these two intentions. Primary intention, I want to free all living beings from suffering. And then secondary, like how am I going to do that? I need to attain enlightenment. One teacher of mine used this analogy once that it's a little like if you wake up in the morning and you want coffee, and you sort of find your way to the kitchen looking for coffee, and you're sort of thinking, I won't be awake until I have coffee. And the first thing you reach for is not coffee, it's a cup. Because in order to drink the coffee, you need a cup. And so bodhicitta, you could say, it's like your main wish is to free all living beings from suffering. I have to free all living beings from suffering. How? I'll become a Buddha. And so it's like becoming a Buddha, like you're reaching for a cup. And then once you're a Buddha, you can actually free all living beings from suffering. So this is what bodhicitta is. It's a very powerful, very special mind to develop. Bodhicitta, because it's based on compassion, then it makes our mind very peaceful and very stable. Geshe says in a couple of books that through meditating on universal compassion, we develop a peace, a deep inner peace that cannot be disturbed by changing conditions. And the reason it can't be disturbed is that compassion, as long as there's compassion in our mind, then we can't develop anger, jealousy, uncontrolled desire, other delusions, because they're not compatible. As long as your mind is going in the direction of compassion, then you can't develop delusions. If you don't develop delusions, your mind is at peace. Your mind is naturally peaceful. It's just that most of us are used to our minds being deluded a lot of the time. But without the delusions disturbing our mind, it's naturally peaceful. So bodhicitta, our mind is always peaceful because our mind is always governed by compassion. Bodhicitta purifies our mind very quickly. It accumulates a lot of merit very quickly. There's a lot of benefits. It's a beautiful mind. Through developing bodhicitta, we become a bodhisattva, and then bodhisattva quickly becomes a Buddha. So more about that in a little, but now let's talk about how we train in bodhicitta. That's what we're going to do tonight. So in this presentation, Geshe-la gives us 5 stages of training in bodhicitta, and it's actually just 5 different ways of developing compassion, and then on the basis of that compassion, then we develop bodhicitta. So how do we train in compassion? Very simple. I think maybe you all know. 2 things. With love, we look at the suffering of others. And from those 2 things, then we develop, first of all, like empathy. We feel something. We feel their suffering is unbearable. And then from our heart moving and saying, this is unbearable, then we can develop actual compassion. But the prerequisite, we have to have some love. Right now, while we're training in compassion, don't worry, how good is my love, how powerful is my love, how equal is my love for others. Most of us are a work in progress, but gradually, we can train in love at other times, and then our love can grow and become more pure. But tonight, since we're training in compassion, we'll just start with whatever experience of love you have already, and bring that to mind, and then based on that, we develop compassion. If you read along in the book, you'll see that he mentions 2 ways of training in love, so I'll just mention them as well. And one of them is recognizing all living beings as our mothers, because we've taken countless rebirths in the past. How do we know we've taken countless rebirths? Because it's impossible to find a beginning to our mental continuum, because any moment of consciousness or moment of mind came from a previous moment of mind. So you can't have a beginning, because if you did, that moment of mind would have come from something else. It wouldn't have come from mind if it was the first one. So there wasn't a first one. A little bit mind-boggling, but maybe you're used to that by now. I think maybe you've all heard that. Anyway, if our mind has no beginning, but our lives do, then we've had countless previous lives, and that means we've had countless mothers. And where are they? They're all around us. All the living beings alive today. If we meditate on that, then we develop a deep feeling of connection and gratitude with all living beings. And it's very easy to develop love for them. That's one of the ones that he mentions. It's not enough just to hear it and understand it. We have to meditate on it, take it into our hearts. But we'll do that with bodhicitta tonight. Tonight we're not focusing on love, but I just want to mention it as we go by. The second thing that he mentions is meditating, believing they are more important than myself, who am only one single person. This is from the meditation on equalizing self and others. We contemplate, I'm only one, others are countless, so they're more important than me. So another, beautiful meditation. We'll do it another time. We have done it before. Maybe you've all done it. Anyway, so there are a lot of ways of training in love. One time I counted 12, but I think that was just in New Meditation Handbook, and there's probably others in How to Transform Your Life. I haven't done a full count. There's a bunch of ways anyway. So we can train in love. For tonight, like I said, we'll just use whatever experience of love you already have, and we'll build on that. And then later, you can train in love some more. One nice thing of going this way is that, you're using the love you have, just wherever it is. Then you're meditating on compassion. The compassion itself is purifying your mind. So actually, I think your love will grow and become more pure through meditating on compassion. I think compassion will have this purifying effect, and you'll have more love, just naturally from meditating on compassion. You can see for yourself. I don't know for sure, but that's a guess I have. Okay, so I said before there are 5 stages. of training in bodhicitta. And in Jason Kappa's text, he just gives like one line for each one. Actually, the fifth one, he gives 2 lines. Let me just read you these lines. He's just giving different ways living beings suffer. Swept along by the currents of the 4 powerful rivers, birth, aging, sickness, and death, tightly bound by the chains of karma so hard to release, ensnared within the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the pitch-black darkness of ignorance, taking rebirth after rebirth in boundless samsara, and unceasingly tormented by the 3 sufferings, painful feelings, changing suffering, and pervasive suffering. Through contemplating the state of your mothers, all living beings in conditions such as these generate the supreme mind of bodhicitta. So we're going to keep each week self-contained, but in the last 4 weeks we looked at the other 4, the stages 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'll just mention. So the stage 1, I'm putting myself on the spot. The first stage, the living beings, we contemplate living beings suffer from birth, aging, sickness, and death. In the second stage, we contemplate that they suffer being bound by the chains of karma, so hard to release. Third stage, they're ensnared within the iron net of self-grasping. Fourth stage, completely enveloped by the pitch-black darkness of ignorance. So with each one of these, you contemplate how they're suffering in this way, and you develop a feeling, this is unbearable. And then you decide to turn it into compassion. Feeling this unbearable is not compassion yet. If you stop there, it becomes a heavy weight. But based on this is unbearable, then we think how wonderful it would be if they were free. Or you could turn it the other way around. If they were free, how wonderful. You picture them free from their suffering, then of course that's like the most beautiful thing you can think. And so how wonderful. And that mind, that how wonderful if they were free, that's compassion. That's the beginning of compassion. And then you can go further. You can say, may they be free. So not if they're free anymore, but now may they be free. You can say, I myself will work to free them. These are all stages of compassion. And then if you want to turn it into bodhicitta, you just say, in order to free them, I will attain enlightenment first. If you're meditating on I will work to free them, then obviously the next thing is, I can't. What can I do? I can do some small things, but free all living beings from suffering, I need to become a Buddha first. For example, the iron chains of karma, only a Buddha is truly free of the iron chains of karma. Only a Buddha knows how to purify all negative karma and stop creating more, and to have only pure karma. I mean, we can learn this, but a Buddha can teach others in a way maybe better than like I could or something. The third and fourth stage, the iron net of self-grasping ignorance and the pitch-black darkness of ignorance. Only a Buddha is free from those kinds of ignorance. So if I want to free all living beings from the iron net of self-grasping, the pitch-black darkness of ignorance, I need to be free from those myself. So there's some logic there. Okay, so then we're going to the fifth stage. There it is. So in the fifth stage, we contemplate how each and every living being in life after life is wandering in samsara, the endless cycle of impure life, and is experiencing the sufferings of painful feelings, changing suffering, and pervasive suffering, as explained in detail in the books Joyful Path of Good Fortune and Great Treasury of Merit. So the first part of this is just taking rebirth after rebirth in boundless samsara. Geshe used to say sometimes, if we only had to experience, for example, birth, sickness, aging, and death once, just one time through, maybe that's not so bad. But we don't. We have to experience it again and again, endlessly. And so we can meditate on this and we can think of all living beings, but think of some examples maybe. They take rebirth, maybe I would think of my grandmother or something. She takes rebirth. She, through her whole life, she experiences sickness, aging, finally experiences death. But it's not over. Then she has rebirth again. Sickness, aging, death, again and again. And it's endless. It doesn't stop. And when you contemplate that endlessness, it's like, wow, oh, that's so heavy. How wonderful if they were free is where you go then. So once your heart is moving, then you want to think how wonderful it would be if they were free. And then you're developing compassion. You can go further, develop bodhicitta. But the main part I wanted to focus on is these three types of suffering. So here he said painful feelings, changing suffering, and pervasive suffering. So painful feelings, sometimes we also call it manifest pain. And that's what it sounds like. Usually when we say suffering, this is what we're thinking of. So small things like an itch or a small pain, or you stub your toe or something. Larger things like a big headache or get a cold or a flu, or heaven forbid, we call it COVID-19. Larger sicknesses, and then really big things. And these, I guess I'm talking mostly about physical pain, but also mental pain. So you can have mental pain can be small. It can be like a little bit of irritation, a moment or two of I don't like this. It can be a longer term thing or a bigger thing. It can be a huge like heartbreak or depression or different things. So many, many different types of manifest pain or painful feelings, both physical and we usually say mental. But just remember, when we say mental here, we mean basically emotional in ordinary language. So this is manifest pain or painful feelings. And if we want to meditate on that in order to develop compassion, that's actually just what you would normally think of when you think of meditating on compassion. You bring all living beings to mind. You think of some examples, experiencing painful feelings of one type or another, and you just let yourself feel how unbearable that is that they're experiencing those painful feelings, until you're ready to say how wonderful if they were free. May they be free. I will work to free them. You do any of these, stop along the way and hold it, and then finally, in order to free them, I will attain enlightenment. Like that. Sometimes you don't want to rush too fast to I will attain enlightenment, because there's something really special about holding that compassion and really picturing how wonderful if they were free. And just my experience, if you hold that for a while, it really puts your heart into it. So that then when you're saying, I will become a Buddha, I need to become a Buddha for them, it's really meaningful. Because it can go the other direction if you're impatient with yourself and you're like, no, I have to have bodhicitta now. And then you're like, okay, I have to become a Buddha. You can forget why. And so you have to, maybe I'm the only one who does that. But I have done it in the past, and so I'm saying it in case any of you have done it. It's easy to push too hard to develop bodhicitta, and then you lose that compassionate heart. So you do want to give yourself some time to feel that compassion, how wonderful if they were free. And then when you're really feeling it, then you can go forward and think, I'll become a Buddha. And then bodhicitta is really joyful. It's really like, I really want them to be free. I'm so looking at that, and this is the way. And bodhicitta is how they will be free. If I become a Buddha, I can free them all. Maybe it'll take a while, but I can free them all. Actually, from your perspective, when you attain enlightenment, it'll be instant. Instantly, everyone else will be free from samsara too. From their perspective, it takes a little longer. That's maybe too much for tonight. But that's like we're on that side right now. We're like so many others have attained enlightenment. They are actively freeing us, and it feels like it's taking a long time. From our perspective, from their perspective, it's so fast. They're already done. But from our perspective, it's like it takes a little more time. anyway, maybe that's too much. But so meditating I almost said pervasive suffering. Meditating on painful feelings, developing compassion for painful feelings. Very straightforward. It's basically what you've probably done many times. Meditating on compassion is really meaningful, really useful, and yeah, that's one of the three here tonight.